to monitor what is now predicted out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. The job situation, we mentioned before, the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods. War, that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the president of the United States, the commander. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
In the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these. I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. You got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. Adversaries are, and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us, the President of the United States in 2016 and his plan in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. The United States of America prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look, he has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys, with friends, with allies around the country, and because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolation, us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Senator Harris, Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia Pacific and against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office, ISIS had captured an area of Pennsylvania. But President Trump unleashed the American military, and our armed forces destroyed the ISIS caliphate without one American casualty. Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. Notably, Americans' hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, her parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, this killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed in the back. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity to save Kayla Miller. He came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused, killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in days earlier, and her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump alive today,
Thank you, Vice
look, we
President.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last $1 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President.
terrorism. President Donald Trump got us out of the
Thank you,
deal
Vice President Pence.
and to Baghdad.
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm to
Pence.
Americans. President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer. People know President Donald Trump will never
Thank you,
hesitate
Vice President
to take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give
Thank you.
Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length.
But I would like equal time.
Yes,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful. And it should have never happened. It's the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way. But you mentioned, so after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq. And they suffered serious brain injuries. And do you know what Donald Trump dismissed them as? Headache, pattern of Donald Trump's, where he has referred to our men who are serving in our military as suckers, who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen and said, what's in it for them? Because of course, you know, he only thinks about what's in it for him. John McCain, a great American hero. And Donald Trump says, because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of the bounty is, it's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump went to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe Biden would never do that.
Thank
Joe
you.
Biden would, but Russia to account for any threat to our nation's security or to our troops who are for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is such an important issue, but we have other important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want to make
respond.
sure we have a chance.
I really have, she has.
15 seconds because
Well, I got to
we're
have
trying
more
to
than
keep-
that. Look,
well, I'm sorry, Vice President,
Look,
but you've
I-
had more time than
look,
she's
the-
had
the
so far.
slant regarding men and women of our armed forces are absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the United
Yes.
States Marine Corps, States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not only respects serving our armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise is ridiculous.
But
Let
Thank
me
you,
also
Vice
say
President Pence.
there's a-
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people
you
deserve,
know,
Susan,
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people deserve.
I did not,
the
excuse me,
deny.
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people deserve
create
to
the
know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden.
Your
and Trump-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of you,
Go right
which is what I'm trying very hard to go to the next topic, which is an important one as the last topic was, and that is the Supreme Court. Scheduled to open hearings on Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. Senator Harris, you'll be there as a member of the committee.
Yes.
Her confirmation of majority and make it likely open to more abortion restrictions, even to overturning the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling to the states. Vice President Pence, you're the former governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want your home state to ban all abortions? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of it before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem. Inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden, it's explainable. Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin Laden. Essential that we have a commander-in-chief who will not hesitate to act to protect American lives and to protect American service. Now, with regard to the Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be more enthusiastic. Coney Barrett, become Justice Amy Coney Barrett. She's a brilliant woman, and she will bring a lifetime of experience to the Supreme Court of the United States. And our hope is, in the hearing next week, unlike Justice Kavanaugh received with treatment from you in her hearing, and we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being confirmed for the Court of Appeals, of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views. And
Thank you.
Hearing takes place.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
That Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected.
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court.
The senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade, California to do, would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Joe Biden and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting to suggest that we would not. In fact, Joe, if elected, will be only the second practicing Catholic as president of the United States of this nomination. Joe and I are very clear, as are the majority of the American people. We are 27 about who will be the next president of the United States. And, you know, before, when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about election year or election time. In an election, over 4 million people have voted. People are in the process of voting, right? Been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill. To your point, Susan, the issues before us couldn't be more serious. There's the issue of choice, and I will always fight for a woman's right. It should be her decision and not that of Donald Trump and the Vice President, Michael Pence. But let's also look at what else is before the court. Literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people probably have what will be in the future considered a pre-existing condition because you contracted the virus. The Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing, the contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public
Thank you,
option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility. True leadership.
You know, you mentioned earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintain conditions. But you do have this court case that you are supporting, your administration supporting, that would strike down the affordable. President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question, proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize. This is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion, late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Preserve an answer, Senator Harris, are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama, presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But you're advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic. You're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court together?
We went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr.
Yes,
Vice President, okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume if you can, Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But honest aid is not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States, and that who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body.
Thank you,
And
Senator
the
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court.
Let's talk about
You
packing.
once
Come
again
on,
gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
trying to answer you
The
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you have, they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to
I
tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the
Please.
fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump bin, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is Black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about that discussion?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record reflect, maybe
you.
in the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think
thank
the
you.
American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, an emergency room technician in Louisville was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment by themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with and her family, and her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always, for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this summer career prosecutor, I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America. Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds. George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and criminalize marijuana. And we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. This is the time for leadership issues
Senator Harris,
of
your time
unarmed
is up.
Black people in America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. And was justice done? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks in American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our judge that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all, but you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. It's astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be, was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her, and I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist. And that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone enforcement every day. And President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott bill brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you fill out a bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, African American neighbors, and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice
Record
President
unemployment, record
Vice
investments in
President Pence, your time
education,
is
and we'll
up.
fight for school choice for all.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans. That we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week, the President of the United States took a debate stage and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
Not true.
it wasn't like he didn't have it, didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back. Stand by. This is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He, on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed, and on the other side there were neo-Nazis carrying racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs, and Donald Trump, when asked about it, find people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. In America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president together
Senator Harris.
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
A minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike, is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did, comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the Senator Harris conveniently omitted after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments. He condemned neo-Nazis and white supremacists and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the Americans personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA, you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites in of California.
Thank you,
You
Vice President.
increased the disproportionate incarceration of
Thank
blacks
you.
in California.
Yeah.
You did nothing on you. You didn't lift a finger to
you.
pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record
Thank
speaks
you,
for
Vice
itself. President
Pence.
Trump and I have criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice
We've
President
fought for
Pence.
educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you,
minorities,
sir.
and we'll do it for 4
Thank you.
years.
You know, there's a final issue that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is the issue of the election
But
itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you, because we're running out of
I
time.
appreciate that. First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Out includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and carotid holds. I would like to go through,
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
but I
conclude
want
our
to talk
debate.
about the connection between which includes, I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras, to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias, because yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that, Vice President, contrary to what you may believe, we did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in re-entry, work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President on our record, law enforcement, and keeping our communities safe, and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And I'd like to pose the first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful if your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you invite next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particular of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential, Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing. Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. Vote early, come up with a plan to vote, go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our vote, and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy. We did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly, Joe Biden, on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to transfer power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, responsibility as Vice President, what would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany of the establishment in Washington, D.C., and establishment that Joe Biden's, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level, law enforcement every single day. And I think that movement of Americans has only grown stronger in the last 4 years. When you talk about I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. When Joe Biden was vice president of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign. This week that the CIA actually made a referral to the FBI documenting that those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton. Seen the avalanche, what you put the country through for the better part of 3 years. No collusion, case closed. And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach for a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election, win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules and creating this unitive opportunity for voter fraud. And we have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it. And I believe in all my heart that President does.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight, but for the final question of the debate, I'd like to, the Utah Debate Commission asked students in the state to write essays about what they would like to ask you, posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "The news. All I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is when I watch the news, all I see are 2 candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along. And then she added, your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And I commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. We believe in a free and open exchange of debate, and we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally in the history of the world. But I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader, we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the 2 of them and their families were the very closest of friends. Disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come to people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're people, the American people, each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument, but we always come together in times of need. And we've especially learned that through the difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, right, because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be that is a sign of leadership and is something we should all, that brings me to Joe. Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after it so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. So to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history up and fighting for their dignity. You mean you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator Harris.
determine the future of our country and what its leaders.
Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality. Thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall style debate in Miami. Good evening.